Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today's interview is going to be with somebody who, as usual, I met on LinkedIn. Actually, not as usual because sometimes I interview people that I meet in real life. I am a strong believer that as assistants, we need to follow other assistants who are thought leaders. Reason for this is it helps us with understanding how other people do it. And I deliberately started following quite a few who are not based in Europe because I wanted to see if the problems and the situations that we are facing here are being everywhere or if it's specific to Europe. And for this reason, I started following quite a few people from outside, and she is really awesome. I love her posts. She really does talk about a lot of things with a lot of clarity, and she's also in recruitment. So I figured, well, if we are talking about recruitment and job opportunities and things like that for assistants, it would be nice to talk to somebody who actually sees both sides of it, being an assistant and recruiting. And so let's have our lovely conversation with Clara Chukwu. Hi, so today I am speaking to Clara. Clara is also somebody else that I met on LinkedIn. I keep telling you, assistants, we need to be following each other on LinkedIn. Reason is you can follow any thought leaders you want, but if the thought leaders are not thinking like you, it's not really helpful. And she's one of the thought leaders for the Voice of Assistance, and she does a lot of things. I want to say the things she does, but I think it would be better if she said it herself. And so, hi, Clara.
Hi, Mercy.
so,
Hi, nice to meet you.
so Clara is based in Nigeria. And we're just going to talk about her journey. And there's some of those amazing things that she does that we're going to see how this builds into our journey of finding out about the wellness of our profession. So, Clara, you've built a career as an executive assistant and you also do something else. So, tell us a bit about your background and how you found yourself in these spaces.
All right. Nice to meet you once again. So, and this is something I've said a lot of times. I didn't really start out as an executive assistant because I had some grand plan, grand some sort of grand career plan, to be honest. I started out as an executive assistant because I kind of understood that it was a role that just leaves you in the background at the time. At least that's what I thought. Just you're just in the background. You don't have to do any sort of interfacing with people. You don't have to speak in meetings and all of those things. And it was interesting for me because I used to be like very, very shy and I didn't want to deal with people and all that. So yeah, perfect role. Let's get into it. And that was how I started working as an executive assistant. When I started, it was really the traditional administrative tasks, right? At least for me, managing calendars, scheduling meetings, travels, and all of those things, which most people still think that that is what the executive assistant role is all about. We'll get to that. But when I started, I was really just traditional administrative tasks and all of that. And it was quite interesting for me. But over time, really, and that this role has to do systems than the traditional administrative tasks that everybody knows. And I just found a way to start learning some of those things, right? I had to learn because even if I wanted to be in the background and I just didn't want to do anything, at some point the role forced me. I I didn't want to, but the role forced me to be out there. I had to speak to people because, of course, if you want to talk to my executive, you have to speak to me first, right? So even if I didn't want to interact with people, I had no choice. I just had to do it. And gradually started to build my confidence. Gradually started to help me grow, develop myself. So I started learning things. So if I wanted to interact with top individuals, I needed to learn a lot about communication. I needed to learn a lot about relationship management, you know. So I started developing myself in all of those things. And that is pretty much how the journey started for me.
That is so interesting because most assistants, when they get into the job, they realize either it was not what they thought, and then they are kind of disappointed. And then there are some who realize, oh, okay, it is not what I thought, and then they level up. I think
Level up,
for
yes.
me, the biggest surprise when I became an assistant, because I did not start off as an assistant, I started off in hospitality and played around until I found myself as an assistant. And when I became my first time as an assistant, I was quite surprised by how much work there is. I had
Yes.
grown up thinking an assistant just types notes and puts them in a
Yeah.
folder and that's it.
There's a lot of work.
I did not even know by the time the meeting is happening, you've already done a million things just to make this meeting happen. So it's so
There's
I
so much that depends on, like, almost everybody in the organization depends on you. It's
yes,
crazy.
yes. And the biggest thing that I noticed you said is the relationship building.
Yes.
It is not even something that is mentioned in a lot of job descriptions. We're going to talk about job
Yes.
descriptions later, but it is
Yes.
something that honestly is fundamental for an assistant to be somebody who can be
Yes.
building relationships.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so what do you personally love about being an executive assistant in a world where the role is still very undervalued?
Emphasis on undervalued. And
Yeah.
it's incredibly surprising that even in 2026, the role is still undervalued. But then I understand why. But to answer your question, what I really love about being an executive assistant is honestly the impact that you're able to make in an organization. There's something about knowing that the work that you do directly impacts a whole organization, not just your executive, because impact your executive and of course extends to the organization. So there's just something really interesting about that. And for me, knowing that the work that I do is makes another person's life a lot better and by extension helps the organization grow, helps grow, even generates revenue. I mean, you don't have to be like a sales and marketing person to help the company generate revenue. All of those little things that you do as an executive assistant indirectly generate some sort of revenue. So for me, that's the most interesting, and that's what drives me as an executive to help my executive better. And another thing I want to say is there's just the amount of impact that's grown from just traditional administrative role. Imagine how uh, if you have like incredible project management skills, some sort of organization around the projects being handled in a company, and it just makes the lives of other team members easier, and they're just really amazed. It's just interesting to me because a lot of people like you said, undervalue the role. They feel like, oh, you just type, you just schedule it. But when you do some of those extra things and they are surprised and they are really amazed, it's just interesting to me. So it's part of why I love being an executive staff, because I will always show you what I'm capable of. So
I think that is the one thing that happens to a lot of people, that they feel undervalued and then they start enjoying it once I remember the first time that I actually liked being an assistant was when was when we were at a meeting, and the partners that we had done this meeting with asked me and the other assistant to stand up for a round of applause, because she said it doesn't matter what we wanted to do, we would not have done it if these two had not done their job. And that was the first day that it hit me. I knew what I was doing and I loved what I was
yes,
doing, but being appreciated for what I am doing in front of others was
yeah,
another level. Even though we are so used to being in the background that I had no idea what to do with that standing ovation. But it was really helpful, and I think I wish any bosses who are listening to this would know that sometimes just that extra validation helps with somebody feeling like you see what they're doing. So you
yeah.
have worked with executive assistants through recruitment, and we've talked a bit about, the going above and beyond and the traditional expectations of an assistant and your journey. So what do you think when you're recruiting assistants? What do you think separates a good executive assistant and an exceptional one?
All right. So what separates a good executive assistant from an exceptional executive assistant that I like to call superhumans is a good executive assistant just carries out tasks. When I say just carries out tasks, is they wait for instructions, schedule this meeting, what do I have on my calendar today, what's the update from the last meeting we had, all of those things. You wait for executive to ask, and then you give answers to them. But an exceptional executive assistant is a problem solver, someone that is very, very proactive. And this is not it's something that you can learn, but you have to be determined to learn it, right? Because I know I mean, because of recruiting executive assistants, I've spoken to executive assistants who say I'm proactive, and I've also worked with a couple of executive assistants myself at the Force Behind the Boss, right? And it's not just by saying I am proactive. Being proactive is not by saying I am proactive. It takes a lot to be proactive. I feel like people don't really understand that it takes a lot to be proactive. It takes a lot of thinking. It takes a lot of understanding the business. Great executive assistant, they understand it. They don't just understand their job, they understand the business. So they know how to help their executives, right? They also know they know when to move a meeting without being told. They know how to manage a calendar. So managing a calendar is not just scheduling meeting. You also have to understand the business, understand your executive, understand his mood, his or her mood, understand everything about the person. It just takes a lot to be proactive, to be honest. So being proactive is one thing that I know that great executives. So when you're proactive, you're also able to solve problems, because executives, they really do not. One thing I've realized that they don't want to think. They already have a lot on their plate. That thinking is not part of it. If I have to think about very little things, minute things, then why do I have you? You're supposed to be like my second brain. You're supposed to be somebody that I can totally rely on and all of that. So they don't want to have to deal with all that. And that's something that I would say makes a great executive. And then finally, emotional intelligence is also top on the list for me.
Mm.
If you have to be able to read the room. I know we mentioned relationship management and all of that, but for you to be able to do all of that, you have to be emotionally intelligent. You have to be someone that is able to read the room, understand people, understand how they act, understand their reaction, understand when to say what, why to not say it, and all of those. Those are things There are very little things, but there are things that makes an exceptional executive assistant.
I used to be one of those assistants who used to just manage the calendar. And then one time I had a boss who asked me, when you are doing this calendar, were you doing it like somebody who likes me, or have I done something to annoy you? Then I was like, why? I don't even have time to pee. He's like, I
Really?
had no time to pee the whole day. There was back to back.
I
There
understand.
was zero consideration that and it was
Oh no.
so I think I learned from there that, some things you need to know. Okay, I was at a training for AI
Mhm.
this week, and
Yeah.
for assistants. And so maybe we talk about this a little bit. So AI is changing how people work, right? I'm sure you're using it, I'm using it, and some even think that
Yeah.
AI is going to replace us. So, what's your view on this? Do you feel like we should be worried? Do you feel like we are on our way out? I mean, quite a lot of jobs have been made extinct by AI.
Yes. And I totally understand why people feel like AI will replace executive assistants, but I think that AI will replace executive assistants that are still tied to the traditional administrative duties of an assistant, right? Because there are a lot of automation tools, a lot of AI tools that can do all of the basic things, send reminders, manage calendars, and all of those things. There are so many tools. It feels like there's a new tool every week or something. There are a lot of tools that can do that. But beyond what makes a good and excellent executive assistant is not even managing calendars and all of those traditional stuff that we mentioned. What makes a great executive assistant is, like I mentioned previously, emotional intelligence, your judgment. And that's something that AI cannot replace, no matter how it's human judgment. Of executive assistants know that that's the power you have as an executive assistant. All right, so
We were talking about
AI,
the AI replacing assistants.
yeah. So for me, I always say that AI will not replace assist excellent assistants,
Mm.
exceptional assistants. AI will not replace them because what makes a great executive assistant is not really the tool, how good you are with tools, to be honest. It's really your judgment, your human judgment, how you can think, how proactive. AI is not proactive. AI does not have any sort of human emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
So when you have all of those extra soft skills, then that's what makes you a great executive assistant. And then imagine having all those soft skills and then you're able to match it or blend it with the tools and knowing how to use those AI tools. You become indispensable, you become unstoppable. And that's why I always preach for executive assistants to, I know some EAs don't use those tools because they feel like if I get used to them, to replace me. I mean, I've been in that situation myself at some point where I had to work on some documents. I used AI, and because my executive at the time just knew that I used AI to work on it, and he said, "Thanks to AI, you're able to do this." I felt bad. I felt bad because I mean I did 80% of the work, right? Because I did the prompt and I told him, I said, well, thanks to AI for cleaning it up, but if I didn't prompt it right, we wouldn't have this output, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of executive assistants are scared. If I've put in, I mean, if I use AI and then it starts seeming like, oh, I'm replaceable and all of that, but you just need to make it a blend the use of AI with your soft skills, and then you become indispensable. Just it's just one. This is just one of those times when you need to upskill. Really, it's just see it as an opportunity to upskill. And the thing is, because I recruit EAs for founders, most founders right now are actually looking for executive assistant that are really excellent with AI. So why not? It's an opportunity for you to upskill and then build yourself towards the trend and where we're going to. Because if not, you will just be left behind, and that's just what it is.
Yep. Okay. So you've touched a bit on the fact that you're doing recruitment for founders, and one of the skills that they're looking for is AI skills. When I first joined the executive assistant game in Switzerland, what was happening in Geneva particularly was international companies wanted somebody who speaks English, and if you speak a little bit of French, that's good. Local companies wanted somebody who's fluent in French. If you spoke a little bit of English or German, that was good. So language skills were very important, and that was mostly what they were looking for. And now every advert I see, they want both languages. So they want you to speak minimum two languages, so minimum English and French. And then they need you to have AI knowledge, and they need you to have maybe a degree, which was not a requirement back then. A high school certificate was good enough, but now no. So there's quite a lot of evolution of what they want in assistance here in Geneva. Are you seeing the same since you started, and now that you're actually doing recruitment? Do you see that what is being asked of assistants in terms of qualifications and the skills? What are the new ones that you're seeing coming up more and more?
Yeah. So just like I mentioned previously,
Yeah,
top on the list actually is AI.
yeah,
I mean, and that's at least when I say top of the list, I mean 80%, because there are still founders and executives who do not want you using AI because they feel, data privacy and all of those things, which is absolutely fine. But 80% of the founders I've worked with in terms of recruitment and recruiting EAs, top on their list is, does this person know how to use AI? And then beyond AI, um, they also want to know if you're good with tools. When I say tools, I don't mean calendars and Calendly and Google Calendar and all those things. Project management tools. How good are you with project management? Because they want to ensure that those tools will help you do extremely well with follow-ups. Those tools will help you do extremely well with um, managing projects across departments, across different things that they are working on. Those tools will help you do a lot better with um, tracking and all those things, right? So they want to ensure that you're good with all those project management tools, but most importantly, AI. So you don't have to be so good with tech, or just know how to use AI for easy drafting of memos, emails, using AI tools integrated in ClickUp, Notion, um, Zapier. All of those things are things that will make things a lot better for you as an executive assistant. For
mhm,
you're also able to work efficiently, and then it saves time for both you and your executive and the organization in general. So that's something that a lot of executives are looking out for. And then because AI is now a thing and a lot of people are using AI, they also want to get someone who is emotionally intelligent.
yes.
Someone who, yeah, because the tools are there, but we also need someone who is able to manage stakeholder relationship, who is able to, who does not ruin things for me as an executive, who does not ruin a deal for me because you're not able to read the room because of your attitude and all of those things. They are very, 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 very particular about that. And one thing we do at Boss Behind the Boss is we match executives, our executive assistants with executives that based on their personality, right? Because I feel like that's the perfect way any executive and executive assistant relationship can really work. It has to match some sort of way. There has to be either in the work style or their lifestyle or something. It has to match.
Yes.
That's the disaster we see in the industry.
Mm.
A lot of, I mean, there's an executive who likes to work and work and work and work around the clock, and there's an assistant who does not like to stop once it's past working hours, and all of those things. And then they find themselves working together, and just always a disaster, because this executive will call you at 7 p.m. and you're complaining, why is he calling me, and all that. So, or you find an executive who likes to call and make call and call you for every little thing. And then there's the executive assistants who rather just text me, I'm tired of talking, and all those things. So you just match people based on their personality. There's an executive who is outgoing and the executive assistant who is an introvert. It won't work. So all of those things are things that we look out for when matching founders and executive assistants, or executive and executive assistants in at Boss Behind the Boss. But back to your question, aside AI, tech, a bit of tech skills and knowing how to integrate AI, and then emotional intelligence, they're also looking out for work ethics. I know, I mean, just recently, about 2 days ago, I was speaking to a founder, and she had fired her executive assistant. And the reason was basically because of the work ethics. I mean, she's great at her job, she's great at using the AI tools, she's great at communication, but her work ethics was like really, really poor. And when she was speaking to me, she emphasized, she said, Clara, I need somebody with great work ethics. So founders and executives are also looking out for people who would make their life easier. Someone that is very, very proactive. You see a lot of job description and they say proactive. It's not proactive, just like I said earlier. It's not proactive just for the sake of saying proactive.
Yeah.
They need somebody that is able to take initiative. And I've spoken to founders who have said, in simple terms, I want somebody that has to tell what to do. Right. And that's a thing for a lot of founders, because if they have to tell you everything, then they are pretty much doing your job, because they have to think for high level decisions, and they have to think for basic things that you should know. They have to think, have we followed up on this with this person? They have to think what's going on with that project and all of that. Those are not things that they want to deal with and all that. So it's very, very important that executive assistants know that that's pretty much one of the things that executives are looking out for. And then finally, I've not really worked with executives in terms that are making some sort of special requests in terms of languages, but the few I've worked with, they really just want you to be able to be fluent in English. Extremely, extremely good, because you represent them in meetings, you speak to stakeholders, internal and external stakeholders and all that. You have to be extremely good in terms of communication, how you speak and all that. So that's pretty much it.
Okay. That's actually quite interesting. You mentioned about the relationship between the executive and the assistant. What happened to me recently was I started a job, and then my boss left like 6 months after I had started the job. And I was very worried about who's going to get recruited after her. And this is not because I don't think I'm adaptable as an assistant. It's just because she was very easy to work with, because I really understood her, I really got her, and it was so much easier for me. And so I was worried that I might get somebody who's very different. Turns out I got somebody who is also just as independent, just as open, just as I can actually talk to this person. So it was it's one of those things people don't realize, but even for us to do our job, we sometimes need the kind of boss that we get along with. Somebody
Yes,
that you
absolutely.
There's an
Absolutely.
assistant who told me she finds it very hard to do a job when she doesn't like the boss, because she doesn't feel like making work easy for the boss.
I don't think any assistant should work for a boss that you don't like, to be honest, because you spend a huge amount of time with this person.
Yeah.
and you are always close to this person. If it's somebody, you just have to like the person, or even if you don't exactly like the person as much, the personalities just has to match in some sort of way.
Maybe
Because if
even
it
if you
doesn't,
don't like them, if you
trouble.
understand why they are the way they are, it helps.
Yes,
Because some
yes,
people are
yes,
just not likable, they're just
yes,
mean. But if you
yes.
understand why they are the way they are, then it can make it easier. But yeah. By the way, I really like the name of your company, Boss Behind the Boss.
Thank you.
It's such a good name.
Thank
Okay, where are we next? So looking ahead, 10 years, where do you see executive assistants in 10 years? Where do you see this profession of ours looking? What do you think? Do you think it's going to be just as undervalued, or do you think, because like I said at the beginning when we started, I encourage assistants to really follow other assistants, especially when they're thought leaders, because we kind of need to be hearing what others are doing, what others are saying. And I think that is something that if we can do this, it might probably bring a bit more visibility to our profession so that people realize that it's not just about calendars, it's about what, so that even just to make our work easier, when I tell somebody, oh no, you cannot have a meeting with him at this time, can you do it next week, or can you give me the context of why the meeting is, and then they tell you it's confidential, and you're thinking, yeah, I cannot give you the meeting if you don't tell me what it's about because
exactly,
you know
exactly.
so things like this, so that people do not continue looking at us as those gatekeepers who have zero business asking questions, and actually start looking at us as business partners to the executives.
Yes, exactly. And that is what you've just said is the major reason Boss Behind the Boss exists.
Mm,
We are The goal is to put the EA role in that spotlight
mm,
where everybody just totally, completely understands what an executive assistant does. To be
mm,
honest, that's our major goal as Boss Behind the Boss, and we are not stopping anytime soon. We are going all out for that. We are working towards giving the EA role so much visibility that everybody gets what the role is about. They understand it. So, and even assistants themselves, because
yeah.
because of how the role has been undervalued for a very long time, assistants are no longer some, or let me not say most, some assistants are not as confident in themselves of how what the role entails or how much impact they're able to make in the role. Because and even when they make that impact, it doesn't seem like anything to them, right? So that's pretty much why Boss Behind the Boss exists. And we're not stopping until everybody understands what the EA role is, the impacts that we make, and that visibility on the EA role is like everywhere, both for assistants and for founders. And to answer the other part of your question, in the next 10 years, the EA role would definitely be a lot more strategic. I mean, it started already,
Mm,
and founders, I mean, 5 years back, you or 5 to 10 years back, I don't think you see any founder saying, I need somebody that is very strategic. I need somebody that can think. They just want you to manage their calendar, just book meetings, just
yes.
book their tickets and let them travel and all of those things. But now they are very, very particular. Most times it's even added to job description. This is not a traditional admin role. They need you to do this and do that and do that. Yes, so it's already changing and it's going to get a lot better in the next 10 years. The role
Yeah.
is going to get a lot more strategic.
Mhm.
Of course, with the help of AI, executive assistant will be able to work efficiently, and most executives also expect you as an executive assistant be be able to function better with AI, to learn and understand and know how to use all those tools. So definitely, the role is going to get a lot more strategic, and to be honest, I feel like even at the time, there'll still be some people, maybe a few people that will still undervalue the role. But the goal is to have more people, at least 99.5%,
Yeah.
understand what the role is about and the kind of impact that executive assistants make in an organization.
I went for a training recently, and it was about the evolution of HR. And one of the things that one of the people who were in the team said that until some companies, until recently, the executive assistants, they did not need to put in their annual objectives because they were not supposed to have objectives. Your objective is to support people. So how can you know your objectives at the beginning of the year? And I was shocked because I was so shocked by this. At the beginning of my career, I never needed to put in objectives because I was always hired on short-term contracts. So it never used to be a permanent staff position. But the fact that up until recently, and this person was talking about something like 5, 6 years ago is when they started it in their company. And my question was, so what were these assistants doing? They were just coming to work, and if your boss doesn't tell you what to do, you just sit there.
You don't have anything to do.
What was the plan?
Your life must be really easy. I envy.
I found it so interesting. I was like, okay.
Wow.
So
Their lives must be really interesting.
I doubt their life was interesting because, well, me, that would drive me nuts if I don't know what I'm
Oh
expected to
yeah, it
do.
would. Oh no.
But I think it also
I
took a
can't
certain
function in
kind of
that kind of world.
personality. Maybe it also
Yeah.
took a certain kind of personality. I don't think someone like you and I would survive in those roles
Oh
because
no, I
we would,
won't.
you know,
I won't.
but I think it took
And
a certain kind of personality to apply to those kinds of roles.
that's like a well, that's supposed to be like a situation that you so I'm just trying to understand. Does it mean that when you're in that, for example, if somebody like you and I get to work in that kind of environment, does it mean that you cannot take any sort of initiative? You just need to do the basic things.
I
I mean, you
think
can't.
that was the case. And I
Oh no.
think even if you took the initiative, it would now I did work in one, but that one was because it's a very big organization and this was part of the rules where if you're a certain level, and most of those level were assistants, um, if you did anything that was above and beyond, the credit was given to your boss, not to you. So people just never did anything above and beyond. Because why should my boss get credit for anything extra that I do? So I think it, as I say, it is for specific people. You know, there are people who go to work and they just want to do the bare minimum. I think those are the type
Yeah.
of people who that company was probably attracting because I could not think of any
Yeah.
company in the last. So I've been an assistant for about 15, 16 years now. And I could not think of any company for the last 20 years that assistants did not have objectives. Yes, they were very limited objectives. They're only expected to have one or two objectives. Now, most of them expect you to have about 5 to 6. But
Exactly.
they were still there. You know, it was not you just show up and your boss says, okay, now today you can go back home and you go back home.
No. I can't. I honestly can't imagine myself functioning in an environment that does not stimulate my brain occasionally and does not require me to, that's not challenging, that does not require me to think. And I can't imagine myself. And I think that's also part of the reason I really enjoy being an executive assistant, because aside from the few organizations like for example, the one you mentioned, most organizations require you and give you the opportunity to solve problems.
Mm.
Most executives don't want to deal, like I said, they don't want to deal with basic things. They don't want to deal with things that will stress them. So you have, there's a problem, come up with a solution. Just, or if you don't know what to say, if you don't know what the solution is, give me options and let me just choose. Don't make me think about the options and think about the solution. So that's That's the best kind of conversation to.
I once went for an interview, and the executive that was interviewing me actually told me when I asked him what he appreciated the most about his previous assistant, he said, I loved the fact that she knew when to tell me things and when to just solve them without me knowing. And
Yeah.
she knew when people tell her things because they want me to know, and when they're telling her things just because they want to vent. So,
Yes.
there's this level, there's this maturity that comes with being an assistant. And I was telling someone that because I was interviewing her and she was telling me finding a job at over 50 as an assistant is hard. I was like, yeah, that's because you don't bring out your life experience. You can tell the executive what you have to offer. If you're coming in, everybody has to learn how to sell themselves. Everybody has to learn their own
Yeah.
brand. And if I'm
Yeah.
coming in as a 21-year-old, I'm coming in telling you that, listen, I'm great at AI. I'm sociable. I know what to do. I know what's new in the market. I know what I'm doing. If you're coming at 50, you are not going to be able to compete with this person. So you come in and tell that same executive, I have worked for 5 different executives who have 5 different personalities. I am sure you have your direct reports who have these kinds of personalities. So that's what I'm bringing to the table. Everybody has to learn their brand and what value they're bringing and not accept defeat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's in fact that's an entirely different angle of being an executive assistant that we don't talk about.
Mm,
How to sell yourself. You need to know how to position yourself
yeah.
to attract what you deserve,
Mm,
to be honest. Um, I think most executive assistants kind of also contribute to being undervalued because they don't really know how to sell and position themselves. So when you come to an executive and it's asking, okay, why should I hire you, or what what would you do to make my life easier? And then you say, oh, I'm great at calendar management. I would schedule meetings promptly. I will ensure you don't miss any meetings in 2026. And he's looking at you like, AI can do that. Why should I hire you?
yeah,
I mean, that's you underselling the value that you bring to the table as an executive
exactly.
assistant. And that's part of the things I preach about on LinkedIn. You need to know how to position yourself
And
and
continuous
sell what you.
learning. It doesn't even have to be you have to go back to university. It's just
Oh, yeah.
learn something new, even this Coursera certificate courses. Just say
Yeah,
that every
exactly.
month I'm going to learn one new thing. I'm going to learn
One new
corporate
thing.
writing. I'm going to learn
Yes.
about Copilot. Just one new thing every few months.
Yes, yes. To be honest, it's just there's a lot of work, and I say this all the time. There's a lot of work to be done in the industry, and again, that's why Boss Behind the Boss exists. And I'm always excited to have these conversations with fellow executive assistants that actually understand where we're going and what the plan is, because there's a lot of work to be done, not just from the founder's perspective, but also from the mindset of EAs to change that mindset and have them understand what they're capable of. Continuous learning, like you said, positioning yourself and building yourself into the EA career can give you so much
Yeah.
that I feel like most people just see it as a side gig, something I just do on the side to just earn while I grow into the
While
career
I grow
actually.
into something else. Exactly.
Yes,
And
but you
the,
can.
the thing with that, so I do a lot of mentoring, and one thing I have noticed, the assistants who go into it as I will start with this and then I will grow into something else,
Yeah.
they reach somewhere and then they start getting frustrated because that was
Yes.
not their
Yes.
objective, and now they will find themselves boxed in it, and then it's hard to get out, and
Yeah.
it's so much it can be really frustrating. There's nothing as bad as being an assistant who's frustrated because first,
It
nobody even
is.
notices.
It is. And that's why most people feel like um well, why should I become, or if I become an executive assistant, like I said, most people see it as a side gig because if I get to a point in the career, then there's nothing else that I can become, but you can do it because the EA role is the only role in an organization that gives you the opportunity to learn so many things
Yeah.
at a time. A lot of things. You're learning operations, project management, stakeholder management, relationship management, you're learning communication, you're learning a lot of things, not even at a high level, because you're working with an executive that deals with a lot of people and at a high level.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to learn so much. I mean, I can see why my friends feel like I'm obsessed with this role, but I just love it. There's nothing you can say about it. There's just so much that you can become.
I once told somebody that being an EA made me feel like, when you're in school and then there's the staff room and the teachers are always in the staff room, you never know what they're discussing. Now it feels
Yes,
like being in the staff room when the teachers are discussing
yes,
because I
exactly.
have learned about decision making and the consequences of decisions without
Yes,
being directly responsible for making the
responsible.
mistake.
Yes, yes.
You
And
know,
not being in the situation. Yes,
yes. So you look at them and you see when they've messed up. And it also makes you realize that these executives are humans. They sometimes make wrong decisions and they feel bad
absolutely.
about it. And sometimes
Yes.
the boss is in a bad mood and nobody knows why, but you know why and you cannot say. But
Cannot
you know,
say.
but then in that point, you're the only person in the company who knows
Yes,
why he's in a bad mood. So it's
exactly.
actually another layer of. So the book that I wrote about the mental health for assistants, it's called The Silent Backbone. So that's another level of thing that you have to do because you have to be the backbone for this person at that time when nobody else understands why he or she is having this mood swing or is having this stress. But then you're the one who understands because you're the one who knows what's going on with the boards. You've seen the emails. You're the one who knows what's going on with the clients who canceled deals. You're the one who knows how the financial situation is looking bad. And this person is shouldering all this. And the higher they go, the less they have anybody they can talk to.
Yes,
And if you
absolutely.
can be that assistant who, as you said, proactive and decides, okay, I'm going to be putting 30 minutes for this person and then we can just sit down and we can talk and if there's anything I can do to help her or help him we can discuss it during that time just because the meetings coming after that are all just fire 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 fire. They need that zen time. you know
Just breathe and feel human again. They just need
yes.
that time. It's very necessary. I just genuinely wish, and I hope that we get to that point where assistants understand the power they hold. And that's also the motivation behind the name of my company, Boss Behind the Boss, because
Mhm.
you're a boss on your own because you have like so much power, you have so much things that you are capable of giving to this organization, but then you're also assisting a boss, right? So it's just what it is that I hope that we get to that point. I honestly hope that we get to that point where assistants understand the kind of value and power that we hold, honestly.
All right, so what's your superpower as we wind up? What do you think is your superpower that makes you the super
Ooh.
assistant?
What's my superpower? There's a lot, but let's see. The ability to, I'm naturally observant,
Mm,
naturally observant, and because of that, it helps me manage people better, not just my executive, of course, stakeholders, and all of that. You don't have to, it just helps me a lot of things. So because I'm naturally observant, it helps me become a lot more proactive. It
mm.
helps me um, be emotionally intelligent, helps me manage relationships, helps me understand people and all of those things. So it's something that I know an assistant will struggle with if it's not something that comes naturally to you. So
Yeah.
for me, because it's something that comes naturally to me, I ensure I utilize it extremely well to be incredibly good at my job. So, yeah.
Okay. So is there anything else you would like to say? I mean, I am going to, if you can send me the link to your thing, I'm going to add it in the description so that if people want to know where to find Boss Behind the Boss, they will know how to find you. But is there anything that I did not give you a chance to say that you would like to say?
Oh, you actually we actually covered most things, but again, and this is something I've already said because of our conversation. I genuinely want assistants to get to the point where they understand that there's so much you can do with this career. You can be so much more for yourself. And I'm not even talking about in terms of I'm not talking about career wise alone. I'm talking about even financially, because there's also the mentality that EAs don't earn as much. And that's why some people see the role as a side gig. But it all boils down to what you're capable of offering, what value you're bringing to the position. Why should they pay you a huge amount of money, right? So, like we've said, just keep developing yourself, constant improvement, keep learning, and just know that you can do so much more. You're not just an assistant. Like I always say, you're the boss behind the boss. So yeah, I hope you never forget that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Clara.
Thank you.